All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm super excited to have this episode of just a collaboration on behalf of Uniquely One. So, I am Laura Jean. I'm a holistic nurse and fertility coach. And I have a very special guest with me today, my good dear friend, Aileen Fitzpatrick. And she is a physical therapist. And she has also gone back to more schooling to do pelvic floor therapy. And that's really what we're going to hone in and focus on today. And so, Aileen, welcome. So glad you're
Thank you.
here.
Happy.
Yes. And I would love if you could just start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit more about what you do.
Sure. Thank you for having me, LJ. Love being here. So like you said, my name is Aileen, and I graduated PT school back in 2009 and worked in a lot of different settings along the way. And, you can be an outpatient, which is what people typically think of with PT. Sprained ankles, broken bones after surgery, go to see your PT, get rehab. I've worked in nursing homes, did home health, even worked in the school system for a little while. And eventually, along the way, I had a lot of friends that were getting pregnant and having aches and pains, and then having issues after pregnancy. And they would always come to me and say, "Hey, you're a PT. Can you help me?" I wasn't always super confident that I would have all the right answers, because when I went to school, we covered some of that stuff, but it didn't really focus a whole lot on pregnancy or postpartum. And we didn't really talk about the muscles that are part of your pelvic floor, right? The muscles that sit right at the bottom of your pelvis. Um, and so I was thinking, I really want to be able to help my friends. I should probably go back and learn more about this. And so I actually initially went back just to learn more about like pregnancy and postpartum and the ways to help. And with the American PT Association, there is a track of continuing education classes that they call the OB track. And they focus on specifically pregnancy, labor, and postpartum, almost like an advanced doula class, if you will.
Okay.
And there's a series of classes that you can take. And then while I was in those classes, people said, you should probably learn about the pelvic floor a little bit more too. And that will give you a fuller picture of how to help. And I said, all right, let's look into it. And so then there's another track through the APTA all about pelvic floor conditions. And so I was so surprised all the stuff I learned. I am a woman and I have pelvic floor muscles, and I am a physical therapist, and I'm supposed to be the one that knows all about our musculoskeletal system. And I did not know a whole lot about those pelvic floor muscles and
Wow.
everything that it affects and how connected it is to so many other areas of our body. And so I dove in and I took all the classes that I could with the APTA. And then also, there's a group called Herman and Wallace that's really big on that, and just took all the classes I could to focus on women's pelvic health in particular. There's a big push now in pelvic health to also be inclusive to male pelvic health and also pediatric
Mhm.
pelvic health. And obviously, like each one of those is drastically different from the other. Like a lot of times with kids, it's like peeing the bed at night or not being able to poop, like things like that, which is very different than the issues you're going to deal with in pregnancy and postpartum women. And then with men, of course, they have all their other issues that they're going to deal with as well. And so I decided not to take those classes because that's not actually what I was interested in helping with. So outside of the male pelvic health classes and the children's pelvic health classes, I took all the classes I could to help. And then I actually stepped into an outpatient job. I got hired on to specifically do women's pelvic health for a couple years. That was my entire caseload, day in and day out, where about half of them, depending on any given time, were pregnant or immediately postpartum.
Uh-huh.
And then about half were either, a few years out postpartum, or maybe never even have had sex or have never been married or had any of those intimate issues, but had some other issues, like they were athletes and they would pee their pants when they were lifting weights, or they had prolapse issues, or a couple of my patients were like 70s or 80s and they're having, issues from just aging and postmenopause and the things that that can do to that whole area of your body. So, and a lot of my patients were Air Force as well, because I worked near an Air Force base. And so a lot of them were needing to get back into like Air Force PT shape where they can go do their PT test. And I remember one of my patients in particular, she was one of the people that would skydive as part of her job. She would jump out of airplanes.
Oh.
And she's like, do you know how much of like a punch in the gut it is as soon as you step out of the airplane? I was like, I have never thought about that before. Let's talk about how strong your core actually has to be. And so it was really fun because there were just such a variety of different patients, but it was all focused on pelvic health and women's health. So yeah. And I no longer work in the clinic, but that was my last job part of one of my last jobs in the clinic.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. I find it amazing. So going back to kind of the beginning of what you were just talking about, that you actually went into this because you wanted to help your friends. That's so cool. And then as a, PT, that you just were like, your mind was blown away by all these things that you were learning. And it sounds like even pelvic floor, you can even niche down further. And so you decided to choose kind of the women pregnancy, OB, and that type of thing route. Although
Yes.
like you've had other women outside of that.
For sure. Yeah. I like that being able to expand it beyond just pregnancy and postpartum, but I love working with women in those stages and even prepping for birth and, different things to help that whole process hopefully go smoother. So much we can't really plan, but there's ways that you can prep your body to help it, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I think as far as my community, this is kind of, you're hitting the nail on the head of who we would be reaching out to. So what would prepping our pelvic floor for a pregnancy actually look like?
So, long story short, your pelvic floor muscles sit right at the bottom of your pelvis. And then you've got your deepest abdominal muscle, your transverse abdominis, right? And then you've got your diaphragm sitting on the top. And then those little muscles that go down your spine and the back. And those guys kind of create this canister right in the middle of your core, the middle of all of your movement. And it's basically the steady base that all movements are going to have to work off of. And these muscles are created to provide stability in everything we do. And now you think about it, and your uterus is sitting right in the middle of all of those, right? And once you get pregnant, that uterus is going to grow and get really heavy because it's going to be growing a baby inside. And all of a sudden, all of that weight is going to be sitting on top of those pelvic floor muscles, pushing against that TA muscle. And once the baby's big enough, pushing up into that diaphragm as well, right? And so you want to make sure that those muscles are strong enough to actually stand that new pressure that they're going to have, as well as all of the hormonal changes that are going on during pregnancy. Really prepping your body, those hormones that are being released are allowing your body to grow, to have a child live inside of you, and also prepping that pelvis to be able to move and open up so you can actually birth the child as well. And so that means those ligaments are getting looser. So you have to be more dependent on muscle strength as well again. And so a lot of things that we would work on is, a lot of us just don't ever think about those muscles because they're so deep down. They're not the ones you really see. They're not the ones that you're going to work out to get a six-pack. Like that's not your TA. That's a different muscle, And so they're not the beauty muscles, but they're the ones that give us all of the stability. And most of us just don't even think about them. And so a lot of it is just drawing your attention to be aware of how to use those muscles. So when the time comes, you're able to give your body more support by contracting that TA, give your body more support by contracting that pelvic floor. And knowing that you can also build strength in those muscles, but then be ready when the time comes for birth to also know how to relax and open those muscles to help make space for the baby to come down into your pelvis. And then how do you actually put those pelvic bones in a good position to open up to help ease the process of getting the baby down and out. And so those are a lot of the things that we talk about. And then even thinking postpartum, now you don't have this baby inside of you, and all of a sudden the muscles are like, wait, where are we? Like if you ask pretty much any brand new mom, they're going to say they just feel like they can't really reconnect to everything right away.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've practiced that when you're pregnant, if you practice that before you even get pregnant, then postpartum, your brain connection to those muscles is going to come back a little bit quicker and a little bit easier. And you're going to start to feel that stability come back into your core, where you'll be able to pick baby up. You'll be able to carry baby around. You'll be able to carry all the groceries and do all the laundry and all the things that are just normal life. Because sure, a baby weighs like 7 pounds, but what about all of the stuff they come with?
Right.
You know,
Yes.
and with lack of sleep and with hormonal changes and with all the other things that your body is going to be already challenged by, why not try to at least tackle one of those elements where it has that connection to those muscles and you can regain that control a little bit quicker and at least feel like you've got that under control. you know
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. That's really, really helpful and insightful. Something that I kind of kept hearing as you were talking was there's like a mindfulness piece.
100%.
And that's something that we talk a lot about at Uniquely One. It's so valuable in all areas of our life, but here's just another example of the importance of being mindful of our bodies and connecting. And so it sounds like that's a really powerful way to kind of tune in and tighten up those muscles, or I don't know if tighten's the right word, but have
Just
awareness.
in control again. Yeah.
Control. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and when you think a lot of women are worried about the ab separation, those kinds of things, a lot of that heals back on its own 9 times out of 10 if you're able to regain that control of that really deep muscle again too. So
oh
it's just a
wow.
lot of those issues, or now I'm going to pee my pants every time I laugh because I had babies. It's like, no, that actually doesn't have to happen. Or I can't jump on the trampoline with my kids. Well, I mean, we could work on that, So it's just a lot of those issues can kind of be nipped before they ever really become issues with being aware on the front end. It's not to say that if you're aware, none of those things are going to happen, because they still can. And not everybody's body heals. And there's traumatic things that can happen during birth and all of those things. So we're not disregarding those things, but in a perfect world where everything goes well, simply knowing where those muscles are can be enough to reconnect and solve issues before they become issues. So, yeah.
Oh, that's so super encouraging. And am I right in saying a woman's body was made for this? Like,
Yes.
we can do this. And it's so cool to hear like the Lord's design of how he made us. And it's fun to hear from a PT kind of the scientific side of what's really going on in our.
Constantly in awe of what a woman's body can do.
Yeah.
Like, no matter how many times I'm with someone who is pregnant, I'm like, this is wild. Like, the Lord is forming a human being inside of you.
Right?
This is crazy. Oh, it's so cool.
Wow.
Never
Amazing.
gets old.
Yeah. Okay, I want to kind of dovetail off the previous question. So what are some reasons that someone would have a weak pelvic floor going into a pregnancy?
I mean, it can be as simple as, again, lack of awareness. And so our bodies are really good at compensating.
Mm,
And we're really good at not being aware of compensations, simply put. And so because you're not like constantly looking at those muscles,
mhm,
it can be really hard to know if you're actually utilizing them all the time. And if you're not using them all the time and your body has compensated in other ways,
mhm.
they're just going to be weak. Like, you don't use it, you lose it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's it's a phrase for a reason. And then stressors of pregnancy. I like to say that like pregnancy really magnifies
Mm,
any underlying conditions that we have because of those extra stresses that are put on our body. And so it might be that it's just been weak forever because your body just never really used those muscles. It just learned a different way for whatever reason. It can be so many different things. Like sometimes it was a fall somewhere along the way that injured those muscles. And so your body just learned a different way to work, and you never even realized it happened. And it just became the learned compensation that your body has continued to use, but it never caused problems, you know? Sometimes it is from trauma there, unfortunately, I know that there are women that have experienced sexual trauma and other things like that. And our bodies have a way of remembering those things. And so that can sometimes cause increased tension. And when a muscle just stays tight, it's not using its full range of motion anymore. And so it can get weak. Different things like that. Definitely.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
It's insightful. Yeah. So here's the one exercise that many of us as women have heard of and know of, and I would love to get feedback. Kegels, yes, right? Do your Kegels,
Yes.
you'll be fine. Practice. What are your thoughts on Kegels?
There is never one exercise or one stretch that is the perfect fit for every single person, because we are all uniquely made. We all have our own unique stories. And so I think off the bat, that's just true. So Kegels are not for everyone. So scenarios where Kegels would not be helpful, because what is a Kegel, right? This is the motion I like to use for muscles, because it's like muscle fibers, and the way a muscle is contracting or shortening is when those muscle fibers grab onto each other and overlap, right? And then when a muscle is getting stretched or relaxing back, it's the muscle fibers kind of loosening from each other. Okay, so that's why this is my visual for muscles.
Great.
So if you're looking at some of those pelvic floor muscles, and what a Kegel is contracting the pelvic floor and relaxing. Okay, so full contraction and a full relaxation is a Kegel. Okay, so few issues that come into play. If somebody already has a tight pelvic floor, you're like, okay, do a Kegel, where is it going to go? And how is that actually going to be helpful if the person is stuck here and they can't do the tightening part of the Kegel and they can't do the relaxing part of the Kegel? Then all they're doing is continuing to re-emphasize, we need it to be stuck in this position, right? For those people, a Kegel is not going to do anything, because they can't actually do one. Now, if a person is weak and they're able to get like partially, that's great. That's a great starting point. A Kegel is really good for them until they can get the full contraction and they can hold for 10 seconds and then they can release. But like I said, our bodies are really good at compensating, right? And so what if instead of the muscle pulling to contract, it's actually muscles from the outside that are just pushing things together, or it's something else that's like causing from around that's actually like squeezing things. Like it's not the muscle itself working, it's things around it that are working. But you think you're doing a Kegel because you can't actually look and see the muscles moving. You're just like, stuff's moving down there. I guess that's a Kegel, right? Or like, I'm holding my breath and I'm sucking in. That's a Kegel. None of those things are actual Kegels. And so if somebody is weak and they're actually contracting their pelvic floor muscles and working them out, wonderful. If somebody is tight, it's going to make them tighter. And if somebody is using all the muscles around it, that's not really going to be helpful either. And so it really just depends on the person for how helpful they're going to be. And the main thing is, can you actually do a Kegel?
Okay. And how do we assess that? How would one assess that? And then I'm going to go into your next question, which I think might.
Yes. So
my next question.
There's a few things you can do depending on level of comfort. You can stick your finger in and feel, are those muscles contracting around your finger? You should feel the, like into your vaginal canal, you should feel it get tight around your finger and almost want to like pull your finger up and in if you're getting a full contraction. Okay. You should not be holding your breath in order to do that. And you should not feel like you're pushing down or bearing down to do that. Like you would like to have like to poop or whatever, like how sometimes you feel like you have to push down, you should not feel that happening. It should be a squeeze and a lift that happens to have full strength. If you're feeling like a little bit of a flutter, then Might just be that they're weak. It might be you don't know how to tap into the full strength that you have available though. So if you're comfortable, you can insert your finger.
Mhm.
If that's uncomfortable, you can use a mirror and look, and you should actually see those muscles kind of like come up and in a little bit on the outside when you do a Kegel. It's not a huge movement. If all of that, you're still not sure and you really want to be sure,
Mhm.
you can go see a pelvic floor PT and they will be able to do that assessment on you. But they will be looking at those muscles. They will likely be feeling internally to see if they can feel those muscles squeeze around their finger and pull up and in. So yeah.
Okay. Yes, those are great tools. You are such a great teacher. Such a, yeah. So, Aileen, you have this really amazing website. You've taken so much of your knowledge. You have all these great resources. And I just want to let everybody know it's called nourishedroots.com.
With
And
a
I'll
dash.
make sure, oh, sorry, nourished-roots.com. I will make sure and put this information for everybody to be able to find you, as well as your email address. But one of the things is I'm in Colorado, you're in Florida. So how can we make this work? I know that I just want to talk more about how an online platform can reach my clients, and
Yes,
kind of what that would look like for you.
sure. So I think when I was working in the clinic, one of the things that I noticed is so much of our time together was really on education, because
Mm,
even all the things we've already talked about, so much of it is just awareness and knowing how things work and how to get them to work. And so for so much of what we do, it's education. And so that can easily be done via Zoom. And then even what are some other exercises to incorporate? What are some other things that I can do on my own to see if this resolves? Not every single case will get resolved that way. But what I also noticed is that it can feel very overwhelming to even know who to ask about certain issues. And so really my goal with the online platform is provide education through these different resources that I have available. Some of them are for free to download, and I'm planning to continue to add more on there. Some of them are paid information to download. But if that solves your problems, great, wonderful. If you need to talk to somebody, I am available for consultations, and even like a quick email consultation, because sometimes it's just a few questions that you have and you're like, I don't think I need like the full on meeting, but maybe just these few questions. I have that as an available option as well. Or if we meet face to face, we can talk through all these different things. And I might be able to give you even ideas of other resources to reach out to, if it is something beyond what we can do online. Or let's say I'm like, no, you really need to see a pelvic PT like in person. I'm happy to help you research what's available in your area as well, because I know that in and of itself can be like, I don't even know what questions to ask. Like, you know, I'm more than happy to pick up the phone and call a clinic and ask them, hey, would you be able to help so and so with these different issues? When's your next available date? I'd like to think that even if I can't help you with everything online, that I'm going to help you find the ways to get things resolved. So that's the goal.
wow. Like
And, I think it's
advocate.
hard sometimes to find those people in your area, but, we'll do our best. So
That's so awesome. It's like having an advocate in your back pocket of,
what I hope for. Yeah. I had so many of my patients that were like, this is just really overwhelming and I don't know how to even like ask for it. And, I would say the one caveat is that technically in order for me to be able to like offer these things to everyone, it's considered a consultation online, not an actual pelvic PT visit, just for the nuances of insurance. And so it's not technically a telehealth visit. And so I cannot technically take insurance, things like that.
hey,
But
that's
it
good.
makes it all legal to call them consultations, and not technically a telehealth visit. So, but
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you so much for clarifying that. So, yes, awesome. Well, I wanted to kind of wrap up by asking one. I like to ask people kind of if you could give my clients one tool to take home and apply to their journey wherever they're at today, what would it be from a pelvic floor perspective?
find your pelvic floor muscles, find your TA, that transverse abdominis, and find your diaphragm. Figure out how to use those muscles, and it will save you in many, many scenarios. So see if you can do that Kegel like we were talking about in an appropriate way. Can you feel those muscles moving up and in without having to squeeze your butt, without having to squeeze your legs, without having to hold your breath, without having to do a crunch? Do you feel those pelvic floor muscles squeeze up and in? Can you tighten that deepest abdominal muscle like you're trying to like blow out air, like you're trying to fog up a mirror, like that deep muscle that gets tight? Can you hold that deep muscle tight without holding your breath? Can you take a deep breath in where you actually feel your ribs expand all the way around and come back in, right? You're not feeling your shoulders hunch up. You're not feeling your chest lift. You're actually feeling those ribs expand and come back. That's your diaphragm. If you're aware of where those muscles are and how to use them, it'll take you a long way in resolving a lot of things. So
Awesome. Wow. What a cool takeaway. Yes. Love it. And I love that your website is called Nourished Dash Roots. Because this information and just your wealth of knowledge is so nourishing. You have so much to offer. And I'm so grateful for this time and just this opportunity to bring this to my clients. So one thing that you said that really stuck out that I wanted to remind people, you said there's no perfect stretch or exercise that is a fit for each person. So I hope people can take that and run with that. You are unique. You are uniquely one. And we're so grateful that you have found yourself here. So blessings to all of you. And remember, I'm going to put Eileen's information, contact information. Oh, she has one more. Yes.
One thing,
Yes.
because if you look on my resources, you will see I do have some like exercise things that you can download. So
Wow.
that is because it gives options of things to see if they will help. So along with that, there's no one exercise for everybody. Sometimes it takes options to work through and you see what fits best for your body as well. So I would just want to throw that out there. If you're like,
Yes.
wait a second,
No,
she's
that's
wasn't
good.
any good exercise that's for everybody. And it's like, not everybody has the same answers, but there's usually some where you're going to find the ones that fit within these options. So
That makes sense. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for the clarity around that. So guys, get in touch with her. If pelvic floor isn't something that you think you need, I can guarantee you probably know somebody. So share her information. And if you and I have never connected on a connect call, I would love to talk to you. I love listening to people's stories. And who knows, I might be a fit for you too. So please, my information will be listed below, Eileen's information. And we're so grateful that you joined us. Have a good one.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.